Yeah, peripheral. You figuring out techniques over there? What are you doing?
I am adjusting my light, although that may not be something that is adjustable because it would seem that the
I think you have a problem with that window back there. It takes away a lot of your color.
yes, but that's all right. That's where the light comes from.
Yeah, and
So,
that's where you're gonna go towards the light in your death. Oh, that's be fun.
yeah, well, I don't know. I'm just going to hang out and see what Jesus recommends because he's done that coherently on numerous occasions.
Numerous indeed.
So we've got wolves in the background today. That's kind of interesting.
The same coyotes.
Mhm.
I should have wolves. I feel like I'm more of a wolf. But, I'm just a sheep in wolf's clothing.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing.
It's the other way around, right? So
So,
I was driving and I listening to the radio. I heard some pretty cool songs that I don't always listen to the radio. So it's like we're evolving around here or something.
oh,
The
well,
song
and
about I have no roots. I don't know if it means exactly what I think it means, but I'm like, yeah, I have no roots either. If I had any, they're in an alternate dimension. I'm from heaven. I'm not from here.
yeah, well, that was her breakthrough uh, track from her first CD.
Oh,
And
I don't
I
know.
mean, she got a lot of attention really fast as a result of selling that to one of the, I don't know, I think it was like a travel service or something. I got no roots, and so it became an overnight success for her. So I guess it's savvy marketing.
And I heard some other ones too, but it's pretty good. I tend to translate music anyway, and I just it's all God speaking to me and what I'm currently obsessed with, really. But it's enjoyable to see it happening in the world, see it around me. Oh, look, you're
Yes.
lightening up. Finally. Oh,
Well,
lighten up, man.
it comes and goes. Life comes and goes. This life comes and goes.
That light, yeah.
So it's all good. It's all part of the plan. And there is a plan. I think that's something that is very important to acknowledge is that we imagine ourselves in our ego state to be in control, but the truth is
Yeah.
there is a higher plan. Just as Jesus, once he hit that certain level of enlightenment, realized that the salvation of the entire world was the plan that had been scripted for him. And he was able to follow through on that, which is pretty good.
Yeah, it's the ego is this thing that is what you really are, and then a conglomeration of beliefs in what you are not. So what you've developed as far as this world, and as far as learning to detach what you really are from what you created, then you can see that regardless of what Devin or One Feather does, they just are active as much as they would be if you're believing it's you or not. And it's pretty interesting, even more so as you just let them be who they are. And that's, you can kind of see they follow this structure, in which we can refer to as a plan, because it's been laid out already in the whole creation of it from the very beginning, or making, however, whatever. This it just naturally flows, as long as I let my me be me. and I just allow it to do what it's going to do. It just naturally does it without hindrance. In fact, only I, as far as even Christ, can apply hindrance, believing that I need to protect my person. I need to save it from anything. It's gonna be just fine. I don't need to worry about. In fact, that was the other song I heard, was that everything's gonna be all right or something good. But more recent song, I don't know what it was.
Hmm. No, that is good. Music is good. And how are things there in Utah today?
They are pretty good. It's actually kind of warm. I just took the kids to a little babysitter time. It's they get some time away from me. That's great. So as far as it's being like 60 degrees out there, that's pretty nice.
That is nice. Yeah, we're in the mid 50s, but we've got a lot of wind today. It is a windy day.
Mm.
So I'm appreciating the wind. The wind clears the air, gets rid of all the little grumbly things that hang out that eventually you end up having to stop and pick up. So it rolls all of those McDonald's hamburger wrappers right on down the street. And,
And that's the new Great West and what blows through, right? We don't
yeah, it just
have
goes.
weeds. We have McDonald's bags.
Yes, that's better than tumbleweed, because it adds a little, I don't know, a little extra dimension to our state of malaise. So anyway, it is Easter weekend, and Easter is the most important, I think, part of A Course in Miracles, or at least it is highlighted and really examined in depth, because it gets us to look at forgiveness, and gets us to look at guilt, and takes it to greater depths, I think, than anything that modern Christian theology wants to have to deal with. But it's a good thing.
Yeah, Easter time. So what does it really represent for you?
Um, I guess you could say probably the central theme in my mind is the end of a belief system that has kept us all crippled for millennium. It is getting away from the idea that we did anything wrong, but we have to be willing to have that acceptance on behalf of everybody. So you can't be the only guy who's forgiven in the crowd. You have to forgive everybody else in order to make it work. And a lot of people have trouble with that. They like to carry those grudges.
Yeah, well, I am the only one that deserves forgiveness, that's for sure.
Yeah. And that may be a problem down the road here.
Yeah, we don't need them.
It will be all right for the moment, but down the road it may get ugly.
Yeah, I find it very interesting about this crucifixion thing, and how at the time it said that those in Judaism and stuff, they're waiting for God to come down, or the Son of God come down from the heavens, and this is the main indicator that he is not the Son of God, and so we wanted to, get rid of him for for that reason, and we used excuses as breaking laws in the same religion practice, and in order to make it happen. just kind of interesting because it's almost the same structure we got here, at least over here in Mormon land. Um, they even the idea of Jesus still upon his return, as it's said even in the scripture somewhere, that even Jesus will be ascending or descending from the heavens. So nobody else can be the Son of God. In the same sense, if you start saying you're the Son of God, oh, they're going to use those laws to, well, first socially crucify you. But if you start proving them wrong, I'm sure it's going to be a little more
intense.
a little more dramatic.
Yeah, and really, this time frame that the crucifixion occurred in was the feast of the Passover, and the Passover was the passing over of the angel of death. The angel of death was what got them out of Egypt, where God sends one of his minions to slay everybody, and he ends up slaughtering all the children of the Egyptians. And the Pharaoh, of course, was on the top of the list. And that vision is very appropriate for what's going on in even in modern times. People believe that God would have the inclination, the desire to murder people for things that are irrelevant, for things that are meaningless. And I think that's why the timing for Jesus's experience rolled around, at this particular season, because we're trying to dispel the myth that God is this creature that needs to bury itself in blood and gore in order to make itself feel good. And
It's true.
That really is what Christianity is trying to convince us of.
Yeah, it definitely is confusing around here, around these world parts. Yeah, as far as getting into this focus on bodies I mean, to play devil's advocate, as far as uh, yes, God, the truth of what God is, would never step out of its own way to kill off things that it's designed in whatever structure. But in what's the difference? That's what's the difference between a body being alive and a body being dead? It's just simple ideas as far as to kind of play around with it. We do think that it has some importance, but of course, to God, it wouldn't be any difference, and so it wouldn't it wouldn't go and make sure that some of them were dead just to prove a point.
Right.
It's like, what bodies? What are you talking about?
And that's the point that we can have a chuckle around, but the reality is that that's really the core of the belief system that keeps everybody trapped in their body, is imagining that God was the one who gave us a body, that created this trap, and then condemned us to have to figure this puzzle out, the great mystery.
Yeah, puzzle indeed. I'd be puzzled. Did take that to run along with that is, as much as yes, God didn't outright give us this body experience, saying, "Here's something that you haven't thought of." For the actuality of what God is, being the total, infinite, and eternal, is in its way of communicating with you and showing you love for what you are, as in this perspective of the perceiver of the infinite and everything. It has no judgment whatsoever. And so if you have a thought or a belief, like say a belief in bodies, as we might just jump to that one instead of getting into the whole story, It will show the belief in bodies. It will represent through the spiritual universe all these beliefs in bodies because that's what you believe. And through communication, it's just simply trying to show you its love for you. It thinks no difference between a body and a fire hydrant. And, it's more or less what you are listening to. And if you're going to listen to bodies, God wants to be there with you, regardless of what you think of the world. The world isn't what is really there. And so, as far as the Course in Miracles is, yeah, if you don't want to believe or you don't want to be in a physical world, if you don't want the communication to be occurring through bodies, you don't have to believe in it anymore. And it can change and shift into a new perspective, a happy version, and all this stuff. It's a matter of what you believe, and it's not so much as far as creation. It's like it just comes from the ether of the experience in what you've designed your beliefs, your desires, and your thoughts to kind of shape and deform, but to form the structure of the static of the universe and into something. And God's just happy that he's here with you, just being with you, just loving you. And that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if it's any physical illusions or, I mean, what is an illusion but something that doesn't exist, or a spiritual truth or anything. It really doesn't make any difference to God as long as he's here loving you. That's pretty much it. So you fix your light now. So dancing around there.
Yeah, I was playing with that, but there is the illusion on multiple occasions in the dialogues of Jesus, where he indicates that God is not thrilled with the idea of our doing our dance with death. I remember in biblical accounts in the New Testament, Jesus says it gives God no great pleasure to see man die. I've also loved that thought because we're the only ones who could even conceive of the idea of death. But God has a subtle sense that we're being possums, we're playing dead, and he wants us to get up and jump around the room and have fun with life instead of going into a coma and allowing a life to pass us by, as it were.
Yeah, I like that. That's fun little metaphor. And yeah, it's true. And it wants us to be all that we can be, right? And it's trying to speak to us through all these things we believe, like the music and people saying these phrases. They might mean something else, but really, if you're seeing and attempting to translate everything in a version of what God's interpretation or communication to you, it's just remarkable how it's always been attempting to motivate you to be a bigger, brighter being. And while that seems to be in bodies, that's okay too. You're going to be getting past that anytime. But yeah, playing dead, it's not as enjoyable as the eternal life in which we have can be. It's definitely something that it seems to be a strange decision for a godly being that can do anything and everything at once to make a decision of such littleness and tiny. I mean, think of the helplessness of a baby, and coming to that. It's pretty intense to think why would you be doing that? However, to reference to that plan, that kind of reveals it all. How do you feel about that? The plan. What's
The plan? Who made the plan? That's the question. That's the query. You know, But I like it when there are certain lines that come up that Jesus purportedly stated, um, and we find them, in both the Course in Miracles and in the New Testament. But I love that line where Jesus says, "I am come to bring you life and life more abundant."
Yeah,
And I think that is really the core of this human existence we have created, is that we have created an existence based on the concept of scarcity. And here Jesus is standing on the threshold, pounding on the door of your consciousness, saying, "Hey, you can have a bigger, better, more amazing experience with life if you'll just, you know, let me share a couple of thoughts with you."
I thought you were gonna say beer. Let's share a beer and have thoughts.
Well, I don't think he would be adverse to a brewski every once in a while, although,
Yeah.
he
Wine all
came
the time.
he came from a region that celebrated uh, wine a lot more than beer. But again, it's another vehicle that we use to limit ourselves.
Yeah, and being raised Mormon, I always questioned. Uh, eh, they didn't want us to grow a beard, and they didn't want us to. You don't drink alcohol. All these different things. And I'm like, that's weird. Jesus had a beard. And they're like, well, that was the time. The time nobody really shaved, and there wasn't really a way of shaving. And so you're saying if there was a way to shave, Jesus would probably shave. It's humorous little concepts, and they're like, oh yeah, what about the fact that they drank wine? I mean, he even turned water into wine, and then now he's teaching us to not drink wine. And they're like, oh well, it was the only way to it was better than the water then. They didn't purify the water, and so it was healthier to drink wine than to take your chances with unpurified water. I'm like, wow, so they didn't have fire to boil water? Wow, there's a lot of different little ideas people play with, but I gotta take responsibility for it because I was running amok as a child and just making all these beliefs and ideas all over the place. I'm like, hey, that sounds good. Let's do it. Okay. Oh, look at that. That's okay. Let's make a church around that one. And I lived it.
So I take it that you've had more than one bottle of beer or one glass of wine in your experience.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And caffeine. Yeah.
Mhm.
I see no difference really right now. I'm just simply doing whatever I feel guided to do and what just naturally comes in front of me, and you know just letting it happen. Let
Yeah,
Devin be a Devin as well as a Devin can be.
yeah, and that's a necessary part of our awakening journey. Also, is arriving at a place where we are getting out of the trap of duality,
Oh,
declaring things to be good or declaring them to be bad. Either one is a judgment.
exactly. The ability to discern differences is what I refer to as the knowledge of good and evil. And that forgiveness is actually the process of relinquishing or letting go of the ability to discern differences. It really shapes and peoples our spiritual universe into being physical. And so, I mean, that's the key right there. But that reminds me of the other song I heard. It was just like back to back. It was awesome. Something about get out of my own way. I need to get out of my own way. Get out of your own way. So I'm like, yes. So,
That is a recurring trap, I think, for most of us, is that, again, we stop and analyze, we think about things, we create blockages, we create inhibitions, we create fears, we create, all of these delightful addendums, when all we need to do is simply observe and experience. And if it's an experience that turns out to be unpleasant, then, you know, in the future, you find a way around the experience so that you don't need to repeat history.
And it's like you just have to come out of that movie theater and go over and do another one.
That really is what it's like. Absolutely.
You don't have to stick around for this craziness. But the movie still seems to play out. You know, even if you move the theater or into a different theater, it would be different for your perspective. But the perspective of the movie you just left still continues on and finishes. It still has a plan that it was written out to do and fulfill, and it's going to be that. And just like you move into another theater, you're going into another plan, another story, another that has an end. You know, it really is just, you know, what do you really want to do? Referring to the Christ.
Well, and if you can get to the point where you can completely forgive the story, then all of a sudden you exert control over the story.
Yeah.
Because through forgiveness, then the not necessarily the desired outcome is achieved, but the optimal outcome is achieved. So you're no longer playing into that trap of judging something to be bad.
Yeah, I like to think of it as recognizing the authority that chose to come into this world in the first place. So recognizing the authority of Christ that chose to do all of this. I mean, if you recognize that, then that's the real only way to recognize the authority to get out. If you don't recognize that authority, it's just kind of playing with all these just thoughts about it and hoping that one day you're going to get it. And really, in this awakening process, as much as it is about forgiving the story, I would refer to it as forgiving the ability to discern if it's a story or not, like the shapes and objects and everything. The ability to know if it's a solid or a liquid or a gas and so on is through these on a scale of good and evil knowledge of solid and liquid and or gaseous, I guess, be opposite. And that when you're in the forgiveness of the story and everything that comes up, it naturally starts to be applied to everything. That's why you start seeing white light around everything, and you start seeing energetic kind of presence and form, and you start seeing that plan laid out before you. You even start seeing where you're going before you even get there, and it's pretty fantastic as it starts opening up. But you can't do that if you are currently obsessed, quite literally obsessed, and believing that this own physical reality, this own single essence is all there is. It is a source of depression and upset and sadness. Like, I'm stuck. I'm stuck as this little thing.
Yes, and fear is the mind killer, as we were instructed in the movie Dune. Whenever we buy into fear, we definitely allow ourselves to fall into the trap of victimhood, and then it just gets on and on and on in that rather ugly downhill descent into a region that is so absurd, and yet we embrace it and make it real.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not believe it when you are a body and this knife is coming at you. These things that hurt a body, or even in food, and it's there. That's gonna destroy you from the inside, and you can't do anything about it. I mean, it's pretty intense just apply it everywhere and everything. If you believe you're a body, you're screwed. That's for sure.
Yeah, it says, well, in chapter 20, which is about the season of Easter in the second part of chapter 20. It says, look upon all the trinkets made to hang upon the body, or to cover it, or for its use. See all the useless things made for its eyes to see. Think on the many offerings made for its pleasure. And remember, all these are made to make seem lovely what you hate. Would you employ this hated thing to draw your brother to you and to attract his body's eyes? Boy, that really that really turns into a very intense process when we look at courtship and romance and allure, because I would say 80% of the planet, if not more, are concerned with the appearance of somebody rather than with the personality of somebody that they want to get close to. So, if somebody's out there doing all the makeup and all the getting themselves into that seductive mindset and creating a seductive aura, then that would be for me the first signal that, oh, this is somebody who wants to set me up. And do I want to be set up, or do I want to have somebody I can have a conversation with and hopefully have communion with on a much different level?
It is definitely very, very tricky in this, this little world. And I might even take it to a different way of saying that it's tricky, in the sense of, yeah, it seems like, oh, it's saying, and you want to project this idea of guilt or shame or something on top of those words as if it's something you're not supposed to be doing. And there is this phase in spirituality where you do try and change the body, personality, and everything to seem and be more spiritual. So you try and stand up for certain things, like, just being fighting for spirituality, defending the truth and defending love and all this stuff, and really defending peace in the same sense. As in, I only wear neutral colors, and I only eat vegetables, and I, all this stuff. Only, it's very, very tricky, because as much as that might be just the way the person is designed, but it's more important to just recognize your reality and not attempt to change your person at all, in the sense of, if your person does those things, then it does those things. Recognize it's your person that does those things. It's not really you. In the same sense as, if your person doesn't do those things, recognize that it's your person the way your person does, and it's not you. And I think of it more as like just little cartoon people. They've been designed to be kind of specific characteristics in this plan, and they're simply following through and laying it out. And I simply have to do my part in the salvation, God's plan of salvation. And that, to me, in my interpretation of that, as much as forgiveness is there, it's to recognize that I am not this person, regardless if it's decorated, regardless if it's dressed as a clown, or dressed as a holy master, or something, regardless of its hairstyle. It's still not what I am. And if I think I am attached to it, that's the trick. Thinking that I have to make a decision about what my person does, as far as what trinkets it wears, and all this stuff. I cannot wear any trinkets. I am not a body. So my body can do whatever it does, but I'm not a body that's not a body. And the body is not what I am. I can't be a body, identified with a body, and not be the body at the same time. It's either or. So I have to find out and recognize the reality that can't wear trinkets, that can't eat food, that can't go through these rituals, that can't be protected from fire or unprotected from it. It can't wear glasses or contacts. It's something beyond, and that's literally an alternate dimension, which is here and now. And that's the truth. That's period, end and done. There you go.
Right. But we do get drawn in and seduced
Yeah.
by all of these adventures that the body is taken on. And that is really the whole essence of salvation, is to recognize that we are, in fact, not a body. That's why that little litany comes up in the Course over and over again. I am not a body. I am free.
Yeah.
I am as God created me.
Hallelujah.
So, and I think that's probably, again, very in the moment for the Easter season, because as we're moving through this period of remembering what the whole drama was all about. It wasn't about the crucifixion. It wasn't about the blood and the gore and the ugliness. It was about the fact that Jesus had arrived at that state of enlightenment where he knew that whatever happened to the body had absolutely nothing to do with him. And he came back and spent time with people, 40 days actually after the resurrection. He was hanging out with his friends, helping them to come to understand the same things that he had come to comprehend. And that 40-day passage, when that was over, when he finally ascended, we're given a story about a light that was unearthly, a light that was beyond the human experience, that he was transfigured in. And that undoubtedly will be our final outcome eventually also.
It's pretty awesome to think of ascending into quite literally an alternate universe of light and love and awesomeness.
Absolutely. So a little bit further down in this passage, in chapter 20, it says, "This Easter, look with different eyes upon your brother. You have forgiven me." Well, by me, he mentioned Jesus, the narrator of the story in the Course. "And yet I cannot use your gift of lilies while you see them not, nor can you use what I have given unless you share it." So, we're being encouraged to stop and turn around and observe everybody around us. Even that, nasty, evil person down at the end of the street that we can't stand, but we tell ourselves that we're forgiving that person. All of those people have to be recognized as the one true self. And then absolute forgiveness is an easy process. It says the Holy Spirit's vision is no idle gift, no plaything to be tossed about a while and laid aside. Listen and hear this carefully, nor think it but a dream, a careless thought to play with, or a toy you would pick up from time to time and then put by. For if you do, so will it be to you. So,
yeah, I think of that in a sense of, look about your brothers and see them with different eyes, and recognize that you've forgiven me, and to say I would more identify with Christ, and that that Jesus is a strong image of that, and we likely don't hold any grudges against Jesus, and in that same sense. And so as you look about different eyes, recognize that you're actually seeing Christ, and this actually seeing that forgiven and being applied to your brothers as well, opposed to thinking of their different characteristics, different ideas, and having that ability to discern if they're other human beings or not, or something different than they are or not. And instead of recognizing that they are all the same, that we are all the same, and the sense of, say, forgiveness brings us to that. And the opposite, I would say, what you are forgiving is the judgments and discerning differences and thinking that they are separate, and to have that projected outward, that knowledge of good and evil onto different things, and instead recognizing that quite literally you're not only simply referencing to or experiencing or talking with Christ itself, but quite literally the presence of God.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah, and so on that misadventure that you had when you were 18 years old and ended up in the ghetto, and you had that thug that beat you up and
You know
took
about
took your car keys and left you naked in the gutter. That's a little bit of a stretch, but you've got to make that stretch and realize that was something that you engineered, and that person really is not the thug that you believed them to be, but was merely an actor showing up on your behalf, helping you to fulfill this mission that you were on to be a victim.
Yeah, I've had a few people coming to that conclusion with me, discussing and trying to figure out how, through the idea of rape. And it's pretty intense when you come from such pretty intense and glitching. What's going on? Are you still there?
I'm still here.
I think my sound is crashing here.
Uh, I'm able to hear you.
Okay,
And
it's back. Here we go.
okay, yeah. So you were talking about rape, which is that's a difficult thing to work around.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that is a horrific experience.
Well, I mean, it
And
it totally is in this presence of, it's happening to me. I have no control, and it's someone with a completely independent will for myself, and to shift all. I mean, there's this huge conglomeration of beliefs and ideas of it being that way, and you kind of need to shift all of them little by little, as little by little, over to recognizing, and just the aha of something as drastic as that is just phenomenal when they recognize, what it was for, who it really was, and what they really wanted in that moment, and it's pretty phenomenal how we have this type of thought system that thinks of something and then thinks we don't actually want it to happen. I mean, come on, why'd you think of it? As if there's somehow a different think of it. As,
yeah, it does get very, very grim when perceived through that lens, through that vision, and and it's very hard for people to work their way through those images and those ideas, especially if the events they experienced are very recent in their memory. I mean, it is not a thing that you want to wish on people, but you want to have people experience. But when it does occur, you want to be in a position to be able to help them realize that this was something they created for themselves.
yeah, it definitely is a stretch for someone that is strictly focused on the body's world and the laws of the body. I'm having issues with my sound. I don't know what's going on. Keeps overloading, it says.
Well,
A little distracting, sorry.
if you believe in astrology, we have Mercury retrograde. That's also a good thing to blame it on. It
Damn.
has nothing to do with you. It's that damn planet floating around up there. Mercury is going backwards in the sky, and that's making all of your computer efforts
He just keeps doing it.
futile. Yes.
Darn. All right. Well, now I'm distracted.
You're not a victim of the world you see, though, and that's the
Uh,
thing. So did we have Easter eggs, or are
Oh,
we going to have Easter eggs? Are you coloring eggs this year?
yeah. So my father is currently at a rehab for he fell and hurt his knee and stuff, and he's pretty aged with all the difficulties he's having. And so they had an Easter egg hunt that we took the little kids to. Atreyu loved it, and he loves running around with his eggs. And I carried around Link and reached out his arm to grab eggs, and he wouldn't let it go. He got a few. He wouldn't let it go. It's fun. And it just keeps happening. It's too bad.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great aspects of the Easter experience is to spend Easter with children, affirming life and coloring eggs and hiding eggs and finding eggs. That can be a very rewarding experience. And I think Jesus probably would have been really very creative in doing his own Easter eggs. I think he would have been making some magical Easter eggs, almost
Like a
like
bunny. Yeah.
well, like things that you would have seen back in the '60s. You know, he would have made hippie eggs. I'm convinced.
Yeah.
Love eggs.
Is your idea of Jesus fit more into the ideas of Jesus Christ Superstar?
Kind of, yeah. That's always
Like
been
that.
that's always been something. I see him more in that vein than in the idea of this guy stomping around, condemning people and casting them into hell and telling them that they're evil and the Baptist view of Jesus, I guess, is what I'm alluding to. So
Yeah.
seeing the love and compassion and the willingness to consider that other people have a whole different story within this dream that we're experiencing, and that you have to be willing to give them a little bit of grace because they're coming from their side of the story, and not being unwilling to have an acceptance for the fact that they were conditioned by experiences in their lives that may not parallel your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And I mean, we literally are choosing like what universe or what kind of a world we want. In everything that we're choosing, we're like, oh, yeah, we think of it being, oh, that I resonate with that is more of an idea of, oh, I have beliefs that fit into that kind of idea. And so it makes sense. So you're actually choosing, you're not really choosing the truth. You're more choosing the ideas in which you want to be the truth. And as far as you've already did it, so it fits into your little beliefs already chosen, and so I mean, as far as our interpretation of Jesus or spirituality and how we see it, we're simply just constructing our world again over and over and over again. And is this really how we want it? Is this really the type of life we want to live? And suffering and thinking, I mean, my God suffered, so who am I not to suffer?
Yeah, well, that is unfortunately something that is rife throughout the spiritual community. We put suffering at the top of the list of experiences that are necessary to awaken, and yet I have been around people who have gone through a relatively uh, effortless process, an effortless journey. So who knows what they were doing in previous lifetimes? They may have been suffering a lot then, but we don't need the suffering. We may embrace it. We may think we need it, but we don't. And are you hearing me?
No, sorry, this sound keeps going on and off. I'm gonna need to get the audio at the end of the video from you, if possible. Then I don't have to keep trying to record this. It's going all berserk. I don't know what's happening.
That's kind of fun.
Just keeps dropping off and saying it's overloading. I don't got much more going on than I had before, so.
Something is askew. Going back to chapter 20, which I like very much. It's one of my favorite chapters here. As we go down further in the text, it says, love has no darkened temples where mysteries are kept obscure and hidden from the sun. It does not seek for power, but for relationships. The body is the ego's chosen weapon for seeking power through relationships, and its relationships must be unholy. For what they are, it does not even see. So, every once in a while, you'll come across somebody who's talking about ancient, hidden, secret wisdom.
Dun, dun, dun.
You have to go to a class to accommodate your purification rituals so that you can gain access to the ancient hidden information that is so important for your spiritual path. And this kind of got, that idea kind of got trapped here. Love has no darkened temples where mysteries are kept obscure and hidden from the sun.
Well, one could kind of debate. I mean, on one side, sign me up, take my $5,000, please. And on the other side is one could debate the reason they have class is because they're trying to expose this information in the sense that it shouldn't be darkened, but it shouldn't cost that much, right?
Well, I'm not even concerned about the cost factor. I just think that the whole sharing that thought with somebody, saying, oh, this is ancient, hidden, secret, mystical knowledge. And, look at how special we are and how we have gained access to it, I think is diminishing the truth. The truth is available to all. God would never make it a condition that you have to do this or do that in order to gain the truth.
So you're saying that the truth is fully available right now without anything done. I mean,
Absolutely. All you have to do is just close your pie hole and listen, and the truth will dawn like thunder in your consciousness.
because I mean, it seems like there seems to be, as far as even for me, then you gotta at least practice how to shut up your mind and how to sit down, how to shut your pie hole, and then
It requires discipline. Absolutely, yes, it requires the discipline.
so
But it is not a secret that God created that is withheld from you.
yeah, no, it's the truth is there. We just need to figure out how to, especially if we think it's not there, right? We need to how to recognize it, and so that's even I'm sure what you help people to coach and recognize, as well as myself, how to see it, how to discern it, and how to recognize it, and kind of a reminder. Hey, I know it looks like all this other stuff, but it's there. There's the truth is there, and let's keep our eyes open.
Yes, and God has no conditions on it. He is giving it to you, extending it to you from the depths of His love, and so you don't have to jump through any hoops to get there.
I just realized what time it was, so thank you, One Feather, for this joining. It went by quick. It's quick.
It did. Well, you were partly bouncing all over the place with damage control on your soundboard, but it was a very comforting discussion on this day between the crucifixion and the resurrection.
Amen. Thank you all for tuning in. If you want to find out or contact either of us and see these videos that we're making, it's available on openandclear.com and themiraclewithin.org.
.org.
Got it. Have a beautiful day, everybody.